Okay, for the sacrum, which is another level of the vertebral column or bone forming the vertebral column. The sacrum is a triangular bone formed by the union of 5 sacral bones or sacral vertebrae, S1 to S5. The sacral vertebrae begin to fuse in individuals between 16 and 18 years of age, which is the age of adolescence, and the process is usually completed by the age of 30. The sacrum serves as a strong foundation for the pelvic girdle. It is positioned at the base of the vertebral column, articulating bilaterally with 2 os cocci that we did it in another discussion, and inferiorly with coccyx, which is the distal most end of the vertebral column. The female sacrum is shorter, wider, and more curved between S2 and S3 than that of the male sacrum. These are the images of the sacrum, and they dominate this level of the vertebral column. You can find the structures of which we'll soon get to the description of them. And for the first part, we have superior articular facet, sacral canal, we have the sacral tuberosity, auricular surface at this level, lateral surface or lateral sacral crest takes this point of this bone. Then we have the posterior sacral foramen, medial sacral crest, which is this. Then this is the level of sacral canio, coccygeal canio at this level, sacral hiatus or this point. And we have as well anterior sacral foramen at this level. Transverse lines, you can see this is the first, this is the first at this level, then the second, and finally moving down to the other level. Apex of sacrum, and we have the base, then ala. Ala is another name that represents wing. So at least you have a point to be proud of. But this is the sacrum, anterior and superior view of the sacrum. And let's get to the description part of the sacrum. The concave anterior side of the sacrum faces the pelvic cavity. It is smooth and contains 4 horizontal ridges, which are the transverse lines that marks the edges of the fused sacral vertebral bodies. At the ends of the transverse lines are 4 pairs of anterior sacral foramina, which are openings through which sacral nerve passes. That lateral portion of the sacrum forms a broad expanded region called the sacral ala or wings, which is formed by the fused costal processes of the upper sacral vertebrae, and they articulate with the posterior medial surface of os cocci. Yeah, right. Because we have the ala, which is at this level, the anterior pelvic sacral foramina. Then we have the transverse lines, of which we've been able to describe about them. So this is the sacrum, anterior and inferior view, and that's all about that. The convex posterior surface of the sacrum contains a median sacral crest, the fused spinous processes of the upper sacral vertebrae, a lateral sacral crest, the fused transverse processes of the sacral vertebrae. So these are the features of which we've been able to describe, and have them as the for the sacral crest and the fused spinous process, lateral sacral crest and the fused transverse processes, of which they dominate that level. The superior articular facets of the sacrum articulates with the 5th lumbar vertebrae on the inferior articular process, while the base of the sacrum articulates with the body of the same vertebrae to form the lumbosacral joint. Dorsal wall of the sacrum is the rough irregular variable plate of bone made up of ossified laminae and articular process of the fused sacral vertebrae. So most of the features of the sacral vertebrae are fused features of the vertebrae, which we did during the discussion of other vertebrae. So we have the dorsal wall at this level, superior articular facet, and the median crest. So this is the posterior view of the sacrum, and that's all. Median crest is the highly variable midline projection of the dorsal wall composed of fused spines of the sacral vertebrae. The sacral cornea are connected by ligament to the coccyx. The narrow inferior portion of the sacrum is known as the base. The broad superior portion of the sacrum is called the base. The first one is the apex, of which is the narrow inferior portion of the sacrum, while the superior is the base. The sacral promontory is the anterior projection of the sacral plateau. The sacral plateau is the flat anterior superiorly inclined surface of the sacrum that articulates with the terminal end of lumbar vertebra. For this case, we have the base, which is the superior part of the sacrum. Apex is the most distal aspect of the sacrum. And those are the features of which we've been able to identify from the previous illustration of the sacrum. So definitely, and also, okay, I should go back and check for you where the sacral hiatus is located, and as well sacral cornea is located. So these are the levels of those points of reference. On both lateral surface, the sacrum has a large ear-shaped auricular surface, sacral tuberosity that articulates with the ilium, of which hip bone to form the sacroiliac joint. So the articulation between ilium and sacrum is the sacroiliac joint. Posterior to the auricular surface is a roughened surface, which is the sacral tuberosity that contains depressions for the attachment of ligaments. Auricular surface, which articulates with ilium to form the sacroiliac joint, is right on the lateral aspect of the sacrum. Finally, let's get to the most distal bone, which is the coccyx. The coccyx is the terminal end of the vertebral column, the vestigial tail in general. It is a triangular bone that forms from the fusion of 3 to 5 vertebral segments, most commonly representing 4 fused vertebrae. The first segment is the most characteristic of the vertebral plan, which has a succeeding segment becoming highly reduced. The coccygeal vertebrae fused when a person is between 20 to 30 years of age. And let's get to the bone itself. We have the coccyx or the coccyx at this level of vertebral column, which is most distal, and we can see it's most formed by fused vertebrae. And the first point of the coccyx is most broad, but moving down to the distal aspect is narrow. The sacral articulation is via superior coccygeal body, as well as a relatively large pair of tubercles called coccygeal canua. The coccygeal canua are the pedicles and superior articular process of the first coccygeal vertebrae. They are on the lateral surface of the coccyx and are formed by a series of transverse processes. The first pair of transverse process is the largest. In female, the coccyx is less curved inferiorly, and in males, it's more curved anteriorly. So that marks the end of our discussion.